I think I always knew I was going to join PTA when I had children. My maternal grandmother was a PTA member in Cairo, New York, and I heard stories all through my childhood about how she and other mothers delivered hot soup to students during the winter months before the federal hot lunch program was installed and it became an institution within schools. So it became natural that my mother joined PTA, and I have very fond memories of the kinds of activities she was involved in while I was going to school. Particularly, as with most kids, the PTA carnival. My mother was an incredible baker, and so the cakewalk was her domain. I also remember lots of evenings, late into the morning kind of evenings, where parents met in my parents' garage as we were building a float, a PTA float for the Junior Rose Parade, a part of the Portland Rose Festival celebration. That was an incredible extra secret that I got to have, getting to see the float before anyone else did. And so my brothers and sisters cherished those kinds of days. That all is a result of PTA involvement. We had an incredible life at my house where we were involved in sports and 4-H and Scouts and certainly PTA. And so for me, my parents modeled that volunteer service attitude. And so I think there was just an expectation that I too would follow in that suit. So as our oldest son joined the kids at kindergarten, my husband and I joined PTA. And we saw that as a way to become not only involved, but sort of those informed parents. But I didn't truly understand the power of PTA until one day at school we began hearing discussion about the fact that there was going to be a shopping center built directly across the street from our very small rural school, and we became concerned as parents. So with the help of the Oregon PTA and the positions from National PTA on safe learning environments, we organized. And boy, there is nothing more persistent than a group of parents concerned about school safety. And so we did everything we could do to make sure that shopping center was not going to be built across from our school. We talked at every meeting conceivable. We were at school board meetings. We were signing petitions. We were counting cars that traveled up and down our street. And we talked to property owners. And through the help of PTA, we were successful. We were absolutely successful. And that confidence and the sense of PTA power in association became very evident to all of us. I'm not sure we would have done as well without the organization. And for me, that was life-changing. It became the moment when I knew it was more than just my child. It was truly about every child. When my sons were in elementary school, I think PTA looked pretty much like the media presented it and what the public perception was. We did indeed have bake sales. We sold gift wrap. We had Santa's Secret Shop. We had popcorn Fridays, and we hosted school carnivals. But we also had drug awareness nights, and we hosted curriculum evenings, and we had bike safety rodeos, and we certainly organized the Reflections program. So that was more than just fundraising, but that's clearly the perception the public had of the association. When I had an opportunity to join the PTA at the national level as the president from the Oregon State PTA, I began to see a shift, a very slight shift, but some shift. For the most part, most of my son's friends' mothers were at stay-at-home moms, and so most of the PTA activities were clearly during the daytime, and it did exclude those of us who worked outside the home. Fathers joined, but they really didn't come to PTA events, and in fact, the fact that our PTA chartered our local Cub Scout and Boy Scout troop, that was the avenue for fathers to be engaged and be connected. They didn't do that through PTA activities. So I didn't see a lot of change throughout the entire time my children were in elementary school and clearly as I joined the national board. What I did notice at the national, however, was an incredible presence throughout the country about PTA and the activities they did that were not based on bake sales. We had a wonderful presence in Washington, D.C. We had a partnership with virtually every national education association. And we were coming off a great success in having the 8th Education Goal added to Goals 2000, or the Educate America Act, with Bill Clinton. We became the voice for parent engagement in education, and that was an incredible high for PTA. And as a result, we began to see a shift in perception. So that by the time I had assumed the presidency, I had served on the national board for 8 years and had been exposed to wonderful opportunities in terms of leadership development. At that time, we provided leadership development through regions. We had an opportunity to attend state presidents training, and we obviously attended the annual convention. And we were able to hone our advocacy skills at the annual legislative conference. And then programming reflected what was going on in the community. And because we were on the national board as state presidents, we had our hands on every single program that was ever rolled out. So things from taking charge of your television and critical TV viewing to early childhood development, healthy and safe lifestyles for children, Earth Week of all things, they were pieces of everything that all of us took home with us and became near and dear and passionate about as we returned to our local units. In 1999, when I assumed the presidency, I became the 46th president of this association. It was an honor beyond description. We looked really different than we do today. We had a board of 87 members, 8 officers, including 4 vice presidents, 8 regional directors that were responsible for all the leadership development nationwide, and we had 13 commissioners who did all the programming efforts from health and safety and welfare to education and the legislative activity of this association. We had youth members so that we had the youth voice, and we certainly had 54 state Congress voices as a part of that national board. Our membership was 6.5 million, which was an incredible opportunity to be a voice for that size of group and a great responsibility. We were in 54 state Congresses, all 50 states, the USVI, District of Columbia, and our Department of Defense schools in Europe and Pacific. We had a headquarters committee that oversaw the operations of our offices, and we were fortunate to have 2 offices, one in Chicago in the IBM building on Wabash Avenue and one in Washington, D.C., which gave us that presence in D.C. Interestingly enough, we did all of this for $1 a member. I was that president who saw that we could do more if we had more money. And so for 2 conventions, we asked for a dues increase. That's always a battle with members, trying not to be exclusive in who can join our ranks. But we were successful. By the time I left office, we had a dues base of $1.75. That caused us, however, to begin to think about non-dues revenue, and sponsorship became an avenue for us to enhance our programming efforts and our connection with local unit members. It was an awesome time for us. It was clearly a growth time for the association. We were in the forefront as parent involvement became sort of the buzzword of the country. I think for most national presidents, our highlights become those accomplishments that made change. Changes either in the lives of children and families and having some direct impact on improving their conditions, as well as changes that reflected a change within the association that moved us forward and made us more relevant to parents and educators. My focus during my administration was on parent and family involvement, and my themes included opportunities in which we could enhance home, school, and community connections. So for me, the biggest and most important thing we were doing was around parent and family engagement. We were very lucky with the fact that we had indeed established an APE education goal, and so parent involvement really was part of the reform movement and part of the discussion nationwide. As a result of the fact that we had already developed the national standards on parent and family involvement, we now needed to look at an avenue by which we could get that message down to our grassroots level. And so while the standards had been endorsed and supported by 40 education groups, parents were still struggling with what that meant for them and how they might become engaged in their children's lives in the school arena. So as a result, we did write and print Building Successful Partnerships, a guide to family and parent involvement programs. This became for us our working document as an association for 2 years. We took what we knew about the national standards based on what experts in the parent involvement field told us and educators told us about what successful programs looked like. We took those field-tested strategies and put them into practice for parents. As a result of the book, however, we needed to begin disseminating the information, and so we launched a nationwide training initiative referred to as BSP, or Building Successful Partnerships. PTA leaders in every state were trained to begin to deliver the message to local units and to educators about the advantages of parent involvement and what that did for building student success, but also school success. And so we became speakers virtually everywhere. That opportunity led us to being part of the National Education Summit with President Bill Clinton. We literally attended every National Education Association annual meeting presenting that message. We had the opportunity to be keynote speakers at numerous state education summits. and as a result participated in several U.S. Department of Education teleconferences. Again, our focus being that it was important for parents to understand their role in their child's education and knowing that the more involved they were, the more successful their student was going to be. That continued to be the foundation of everything we were doing within the association. And as we moved forward as a country in developing national standards in virtually every arena of education, we believed that parent involvement needed to be part of that foundation, that none of those standards would be successful without engaged parents. And so that became our message. And the nice part for us was that we had a good research-based approach to that, and people did pay attention to that. And as a result, we're beginning to see states across the country that have parent engagement policies as normal practices, and state boards of education who understand that students will not be successful without their parents. The other troubling thing that was happening in the country almost at the same time focused on child safety, and we began to see an increase in this country on violence against children. Following the Columbine High School shooting in Littleton, Colorado in 1999, parents began to search for resources. They didn't know what it meant to have their kids be in a safe school environment, and they didn't know what they could do to help both educators and their own children in understanding what was happening. Parents began to turn to us. We were the national resource for parent information. That only made sense. And so as a result, we developed a mini website entitled Violence Kids Crisis, What You Can Do, that listed parent resources and how to talk to children about what was happening in their schools. We also took a really big step for us, and we joined the debate on responsible gun safety. That was a first for us. And the board did indeed adopt a position in 1999 that allowed us to sit at the table to talk about what it meant to have safe gun control. It wasn't about taking guns away. It was about talking about responsible adults and gun safety. That was a huge step for us and heavily debated amongst our members. Adding to that issue around school violence, our ongoing relationship with the National Cable and Telecommunications Association and Cable in the Classroom, we became a stronger voice around violence on television. We had been successful just a few years prior in establishing the television rating system, but that was still really new to parents. They didn't understand what that meant. They didn't understand what that symbol was off to the side of their television screen. And our task then was to make sure they understood and could make appropriate decisions for their own family. The V-chip was also being installed now in any television bought after the year 2000. Parents needed to know they had that opportunity to block objectionable program if they wanted to within their own homes. It became an issue of parent control over what their children were doing and our hope to curb the violence we were seeing against children. With a focus on diversity, but because of what we were beginning to see in this country as an intolerance to diversity, we began to create a program that we refer to as Respecting Differences. And we developed a resource guide called Respecting Differences Resource Guide for not only parents but also for educators, knowing that we not only could talk and needed to talk to parents, but we also needed to support educators in what they were doing in the school. Our hope was that we would decrease or eliminate the episodes of discrimination and intolerance and talk about diversity and inclusiveness. This particular initiative for me was the most challenging during my term and quite frankly the most disheartening. We weren't ready. We were not ready as an association to have an honest conversation around diversity. At a White House screening of the award-winning film That's a Family, I spoke to the audience very clearly about the long-standing support that PTA had for all parents and literally quoted one of our founders, Alice McClellan Burney, when she said, "The National Congress of Mothers, irrespective of creed, color, or condition, supported all parenthood, all childhood, and all homehood. It was about all children and about all families." Very divisive, interestingly enough, for our association. This was a film that depicted kids talking about what it was like to grow up in a family with parents of different religions, different races, single parents, divorced parents, adoptive parents, and yes, gay and lesbian parents, and grandparents as guardians, what that was like and what they felt, and how they felt being different than other kids in their classrooms. For me, the banner continued to be all parents, all children. However, very problematic for many of our members, and it did become a divisive part of my term. While I stand by that decision, and I know we've moved a long ways today, it still is about being inclusive and addressing the needs of every single child through every single parent. A hard time for us, continues to be a debate for us, but we are indeed making the turn in the corner. Lastly, a highlight for me was clearly the 2001 convention. I was going out of office, but certainly not out of office without a lot of discussion. After 6 long years of study, including 3 years of strategic planning, the 2001 delegates to convention adopted a streamlined governance structure. It was huge for us, the first major change in decades. And what that adoption meant was that we embraced a new set of bylaws. We reduced our board, our national board, from 87 to 28. We created a National Council of States, the first of any association in the country. And we broadened the membership to national PTA committees by reaching out to our members at large. It offered us an opportunity to hear from the grassroots as opposed to dealing with topics only at the national level and filtering them down to local units. It was an incredible shift in structure for us. We also had great excitement around a national identity campaign, a new one for us. After, again, many years of research, we are known for studying things almost to the point where we've changed topics by the time we reach conclusion. But this one was a unifying call from our members. PTA had become a generic household name, meaning any parent group anywhere. And we knew we were more than that, and we wanted to be separated from those non-affiliated PTA units. So, unveiling a national identity campaign brought to us a new logo and a new tagline. A tagline that was to be part of every single state and their constituent organizations in everything, their letterhead, all of their branding. So we became National PTA, Every Child, One Voice. Every child, because we are about every child. It has always been our cause and will continue to be our cause. One Voice, because we have an important national message to deliver around child advocacy. And this was for us our unifying mark with 54 state congresses. We became the brand we had always wanted to be. We eliminated the question of what parent group you belong to, and the media began to pay attention. That tagline continues to be our voice today.